The drama as Michigan works to lure Bryce Underwood away from LSU has continued into the weekend. It has been a wild, wild weekend. I can tell you some of what happened. Obviously, can't spill it all. But we'll talk about where the Wolverines stand as it pertains to the recruitment of Bryce Underwood here on this episode of Locked On Wolverines.
You are Locked On Wolverines, your daily podcast on the Michigan Wolverines, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Monday. We are back and doing it. Locked On Wolverines podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. I'm your man on the ground, Isaiah Hole, publisher of Wolverines Wire through USA Today Sports Media Group. I had so many people on the message boards. I was on the Fort and Maize and Blue Review last night, and people who I was sharing some intel in there. And there were people who were begging me for an emergency podcast yesterday. I'm glad I did not do one because it was a lot of moving parts and a lot of changing intel, a lot of different things that were happening. So for those of you who were not on a premium message board, again, I highly recommend that you not only read my stuff at Wolverines Wire and watch this show, but I still recommend that you go and join, whether it's the Wolverine.com or Maize and Blue Review or the Michigan Insider. I'm a member of both the Wolverine and Maize and Blue Review personally, and my mentors over at the Michigan Insider, Steve Lorenz. But I highly recommend being on one of those if you want a lot of that up-to-date intel. If you want to kind of get, though, the type of thing where it's like, I don't want all of the info all the time as it happens because things can change on a dime. What did I tell you last week about recruiting? It isn't about coaxing out like someone's already pre-made decision and, and then basically building the puzzle out until you say, aha, it's this. And then they're like, you got me, I'm committed. It doesn't work that way. Things change on a dime. There's a reason why I've said, like, even when things have looked good or bad, you can't necessarily count on, especially with this Bryce Underwood situation, it being, a coin flip doesn't mean, okay, well, Michigan's going to win the coin flip. It could mean Michigan's going to lose it. And then people are going to say he was never coming here and then discredit anyone who said that there was hope, right? Hope doesn't mean results. We talked about that on Friday's show. That said, it's been a gamut of emotions if you're following this closely, which I know that a lot of you are. Though you're not necessarily as privy to everything that is going on. So I'll share with you kind of what I can. And it's for those who want me to share everything, it's and this is kind of the thing when it comes to recruiting. Sometimes if you overshare, it's kind of like the Doctor Strange thing in Infinity War. Is that the right one? Yeah, Infinity War, where he says, if I tell you what happens, it won't happen. That's kind of how that works sometimes. And that certainly kind of played a little bit of a part in a little minute part in what happened last week. So Bryce Underwood, I had put the 60% chance that he ends up at Michigan last week. Again, that's a little bit better than a coin flip. And that was highly contingent on, as people had come to find out on the message boards, a meeting that was supposed to happen on Sunday. I don't know if it was a Zoom meeting. I don't know who was all going to be in the meeting. I just knew that there was going to be a meeting. I've known about that for about 2 weeks. And that was essentially supposed to be, from my understanding, Michigan's closing statement. So that's why last week I said, you have to get to the point, you have to get through the weekend, right? You have to survive the LSU visit, and then you have to get through that next weekend, which was basically get through to today, without him basically saying, I am reaffirming my commitment to LSU. All right. So it looked a little dire on Thursday night with the likely turning down Michigan thing. And then it was turned out as good reporting by Josh Henschke at Maize and Blue Review. This was his intel that was a troll. But then the meeting didn't end up happening. I checked in with a couple of my sources close to the Underwoods, two of my sources, and it was they were like, for me, it was like, okay, how's it going? What time is it? What's happening? How do we feel? And it went from being really optimistic earlier in the week to being like, it was literally like the dream is all but dead at this point. It's probably not happening. I mean, if you could put a percentage on it, it was kind of like 10% out of 100. Like, you got to get through to signing day and all of that kind of stuff. And, never say never, but it's probably not happening. He just wants to go to LSU. That is a common denominator. He does want to go to LSU. But as I described as well to a colleague of mine, if you have a dream job and your dream job is like, I want to work at this specific place. Like, for me, when I was getting out of college, my dream job was to work for United Talent Agency. That's where I wanted to work. But if, a commensurate talent agency, like, I actually ended up interviewing with, what is it called? I don't even remember the name of it now. It's not IMG. Maybe it was IMG. I don't remember. It was another one of the big five at the time. It's been since swallowed up, I believe. But, I interviewed with a couple of the other big guns. Let's say like they had offered me a lot more money to do the same job, right? I wanted to be an agent trainee at United Talent Agency. That was my dream job. But if like CAA or, William Morris or Endeavor, now they're together, WME, they merged while I was out there. Let's say one of those others that is like essentially within that top 4 or 5, whatever it was at that time, offered me way more money to do essentially the same job. It's kind of like, well, it's a no-brainer for me to take that. Okay. So, that's in some ways part of, it's not the whole, right? Like, I don't want you to think that that's the whole of it all. It's not all based on money, but certainly that's a deciding factor, right? Like I could live okay working at this place, or I could I could be set, for life potentially working at another place. Right. So that's part of the calculus into why I was very confident going into the weekend. But it all hinged on this meeting taking place. And by all accounts, the meeting didn't take place. So if you were on the Wolverine.com last night, you saw me say, I think the dream is dead at this point. And then I got told that maybe there's a little bit of life here. And then things turned on a dime, essentially. So let's talk about where things stand now. As much as I can, right? I got to keep a lot of things close to the vest still, unfortunately. Again, once whatever decision is made, whatever's done, we will come in and we'll spill all the beans as to timelines, what we knew, when we knew it, all that kind of stuff. We'll do that then. But let's move on. Let's continue this conversation. Let's do so here in just a moment. But before we do, our friends over at 5 Hour Energy know that being a passionate football fan isn't just a hobby, it's a way of life. It takes a lot of energy to power through all-day tailgates, touchdown celebrations, or an agonizing second overtime, which is why they've created the Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot with a special flavor called Fan Fuel, the energy shot made just for super fans like you and me. The fans who are first in the parking lot and the last to leave, we see you. I see you, those of you who are tailgating super late. You know what gave me a little bit of Michigan fan fuel this week? Well, it wasn't a game at all. It was just kind of being able to sit back and take in a full afternoon of college football, getting to watch Ohio State, Michigan State, LSU, all of these different games. And the reason I was able to power through is 5 Hour Energy, because 5 Hour Energy knows that no matter what team you root for, being a fan requires heart, soul, and a whole lot of energy. Whether you're prepping for the big tailgate or ironing your jersey, your game day to-do list is always a mile long. That's why the limited edition Stand the Fan 5 Hour Energy Shot is here to help you keep you fueled throughout the season. So what's your fan fuel this week? Whatever it is, do it with a 5 Hour Energy, available on 5hourenergy.com, shipped nationwide. All right, we're going to continue on here in just a moment. But before we do, you've seen the sign. If you're watching on YouTube, you know there's a Michigan LED sign behind me. I got that through Team Ticker. Team Ticker is a one-of-a-kind sports sign for college sports fans. Team Ticker is a 1.5 by 2 foot wall sign featuring the Block M logo that has a cool retro-looking LED display. The display is updated daily with fresh content such as countdown to the next game, schedule, standings, stats, and news. It's super fun and a great way to stay connected with Michigan Wolverines sports. It's a combination of design and function that gives you an entertaining, creative way to display your team pride while providing a unique connection to your favorite team. Whether it's football, men's and women's basketball, baseball, soccer, or softball, Team Ticker has you covered. Never miss a game as the high-tech retro display provides a countdown to the next big game as well as daily updates of the latest team news, stats, schedules, standings, and much more. Using the content control section of the mobile app allows you to control the sports you see, and the remote control function allows you to jump directly to any section of the content. Each sign is officially licensed, meeting high-quality standards, and is assembled by hand in the U.S. The Team Ticker is the ultimate addition to your Michigan Wolverines sports collection. Once you hang it on your wall, it's going to be the talk of all your fellow Michigan fans if you're looking for that one eye-catching item. To showcase your team pride or a gift for that special Wolverines fan, go to teamticker.com and pick up your Team Ticker today. Team Ticker is a one-of-a-kind sports sign. Go to teamticker.com. Use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive $50 off of your Team Ticker purchase. All right. Let's continue on talking about where things stand with Belleville 5-star quarterback, number 1 overall recruit in the country, Bryce Underwood. So like I said, things somewhat turned on a dime. So if you were on the message boards, if you're sitting there reading, I think the thread was very specifically called Today, that, because it was started to discuss the event that was potentially happening and didn't end up happening. It was in that thread that I posted the Undertaker from WWE sitting up in his coffin, come back to life, right? I said the dream is all but dead, and it turns out that it wasn't that was wrong. At that moment, it kind of was. Correct. Kind of was correct. Let me continue that as a cohesive sentence that makes sense here. I'm a little confused right now. I've got a new teleprompter situation up ahead of me for the ad reads. So having a TV in my face is kind of confusing. Nonetheless, it was definitely kind of correct at that time. That was the latest intel. But this is the whole point of recruiting, right? Like, you are dealing with a 17-year-old kid that is getting more attention than any recruit in the country in a lot of ways, right? Because he's the number 1 overall recruit. He's got people trying to woo him, probably not just from Michigan and LSU, but certainly, even though it is only Michigan and LSU, but certainly you have to imagine other schools are like, hey, if Michigan's getting in on this thing, what can we do? Right? Like, he's going to get that type of attention. You go to those games at Belleville and you see, or this last one was in Novi, the Central Catholic Central game. Multiple people told me more people they've ever seen there, right? Like, it was just a massive turnout. So you have to understand, I bring that up because a 17-year-old's mind can change, right? It is malleable. There's things that a 17-year-old can think is the direction they want to take in life. They're like, this is going to fix my life. This is going to be, heck, I'm 43 years old, and there's times where I'm like, I need that pair of pants because that's going to change my life, right? Like, and I'm way more mature and make certainly better decisions, not necessarily always great decisions, but I make better decisions now than I did when I was 17 years old, when I literally thought having a chain wallet and this one very specific corn shirt was going to change my life, right? Imagine that when you have multiple adults trying to also pitch you millions and millions of dollars, right? And a lifestyle, right? For Michigan, they also have to kind of change the perception that he's had over a essentially year period of what life in Baton Rouge was going. He's sitting there, mentally thinking I'm going to go to Baton Rouge. I'm going to be around, these buildings. I'm going to be wearing these colors. I'm going to be doing these things. Okay. So you also have to change the perception. So he can change his mind, right? He can change on a dime. And that seems to be, I don't want to say is, I'm just going to say seems to be precisely what happened sometime yesterday. So I can't speak much on where things are because, again, if I tell you what happens, it won't happen. But certainly Michigan is now in a really good place as it comes with Bryce Underwood. I put 60% on my percentage before. I'm not going to change my percentage at this point necessarily, but I will say I am more confident. But I want to see certain things happen. Certainly the things that are being told to me have me pretty amped to be doing the show. However, we still need to see these certain steps take place before I can say, all right, he is in or he is out. Okay. I would keep an eye out. And one of the fringe benefits of Belleville losing to Novi or Detroit Catholic Central, it's in Novi. One of the fringe benefits is now Belleville does not have a game on Saturday. They do not have a conflict with Michigan Northwestern. I'd keep my eyes just on seeing, will he end up coming to that game? If that happens, I would venture to say, like, Michigan's in the pole position. I think that Michigan's already been very close to being in the pole position at times. But again, like, there was a reason why I tried to help you explain where he is, right? As a 17-year-old kid, there's a reason why posting a graphic of likely to turn down Michigan's offer is a troll job on Thursday night, right? Like, it's a 17-year-old kid move, right? Like, that's part of it. So I think that Michigan's in a really good spot. And I think that if he ends up coming to the game on Saturday, which is certainly a possibility, if not a strong one, then that would kind of tell you the trajectory of everything. It certainly could not have helped for him to be watching LSU's game against Florida, right? Their loss to Florida. 7 sacks on Garrett Nussmeier, Brian Kelly blowing up on the sidelines, players yelling at him. The last couple of weeks couldn't have gone better for Michigan as far as LSU. Even with Bryce going to the LSU game last week against Alabama, I'm told that he didn't even stay for that whole game. So things could not have gone better for Michigan, right? This is like I said, this is like the Jim Harbaugh recruiting him to come as the head coach, prying him away from the San Francisco 49ers. You need certain things to happen, right? And so far, pretty much all of these things that Michigan's needed to happen, most of them have happened. They're much like with the Harbaugh scenario. There's going to be some times where there's setbacks. There's moments where it feels like it's not happening. I remember there being a point where everyone was like, the dream is dead, and then they were alive again. It mirrors itself in a lot of different ways, and that's kind of where I feel like it is. So if it happens, what then? Because obviously that's a paradigm shift. Everything looks different if that's the case. And what happens if not? Let's talk about it here in just a moment. But before we do, get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 to get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, let's continue on here in just a moment. But before we do, listen, so many live events, live sporting events. We got basketball tonight, and on Thursday, you got football on Saturday. There's concerts galore coming to town. You might want to get to go see some comedy shows. The best way to get in there is with Game Time, but not only with Game Time, but using the Game Time Picks feature that makes getting tickets to see all your favorite teams play live even easier. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only the incredible deals and great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. What's more, they've got the super deal. There's views from your seat that you can see before you buy, so you're not going to have an obstructed view. You know exactly what you're going to be looking at when you get there. And with their lowest price guarantee, event cancellation protection, you know that you can have that peace of mind that you're going to make sure that you're paying the least amount. And if something happens, guess what? You don't have to worry about it. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, so let's continue on with this Bryce Underwood stuff. It's kind of rare that we can do a whole show on it. And then I know a lot of people have asked me, what's the timeline? When will we know whatever? I mean, it could be literally any time at any time. I would venture like we'll kind of have a better idea about a week from now as to whether Michigan's overtures will be accepted or if they will be declined. What I can say is Michigan's overtures are still being heard at this point. Things are ongoing at this point. And I know that that's not scaring any LSU people, but I think honestly it should. Does that mean that he will end up wearing maize and blue next year? Not necessarily. I just want to like really make sure that you all understand that, right? Like just because things seem to be going well, things have already turned on a dime for worse and turned on a dime for the better. That's no saying that it can or won't happen again. This isn't an zero-sum game, and there will be certainly, you know, if he ends up at LSU, there's going to be people coming and pointing at my direction and others who have spoken out about this and say you were wrong. Well, I'm not telling you he's going to end up at Michigan. I'm just saying at this juncture, Michigan is in the thick of it, to my understanding, based off of conversations I've had with multiple people. Okay, so there's all of that. And there's a lot of rumors out there that I wish I could touch on that I'm not going to, about different things that are surrounding this recruitment. Again, we will tell you what we know when we can tell you. And for some of them, it might not be until it's, you know, things have either Bryce is signed, signed one way or another, season's over, whatever, you know what I mean? Again, not trying to just jeopardize. I want to keep you as informed as I possibly can based off of the conversations I've had. So if Michigan does get Bryce Underwood, like I said, it's a paradigm shift. I do expect multiple people, and some of these are names that you would expect. Like, right, I've been waiting to see what happens with Elijah Dotson, which I think very well could come before Bryce makes a decision. Okay. I think I gave him like a chance of 7 out of 10, well beyond a coin flip to end up in this class. I know Michigan really wants him regardless of Bryce Underwood, so we'll see on that. Derek Meadows obviously visited for the Oregon game a couple weeks ago. I'm curious and interested to see what happens with him. He already is a flip candidate, but obviously you have to kind of have your ducks in a row from an offensive perspective. Right now, Michigan doesn't have a quarterback in the class. So I would expect that would help with that recruitment in a very strong measure. I'd keep my eye out on just some top flight prospects across the country. And don't be surprised if you see some names pop up that you hadn't even really heard of throughout this process. If you're following strictly Michigan recruiting, not just national college football recruiting, there certainly could be some things with that. Okay. Regardless of what Underwood decides, I do expect Michigan to go after a transfer portal quarterback. And I know Miller Moss has been thrown out a lot. I can't speak to that. I don't have any good sources on whether or not they are pursuing or will get Miller Moss from USC, who does appear like he's going to be going into the transfer portal. Regardless, I do expect that they're going to go out and get a very good, more than serviceable quarterback, regardless of Bryce Underwood's decision, because you do need more stability in that quarterback room. But I do think that you will see some positive movement if Bryce comes with recruits across the country, even with the limited amount of time that Michigan has, right? Because you have to keep in mind, 2 weeks from Wednesday is early signing day. So there's not a lot of time to suddenly get into recruitments that you haven't been in on, but certainly there can be places to make some moves. Now, if Michigan misses on Bryce Underwood, which again, you hope that you have that understanding of where you are sometime by this time next week. Because if not, then you're looking at a couple different guys that are committed elsewhere, whether it's the quarterback from Hawaii that's committed to Cal, whether it's the quarterback at Maryland, there's all these different guys that Michigan can certainly get in on. I don't expect Carter Smith to be back in the class, but certainly there are different opportunities that Michigan can seek after if that doesn't work. And on top of that, you can still go and get a quarterback in the portal. I do want to reassure you, to some this is reassurance, to some this is disambiguation. Credit shout out to was it Canada Mike who loved that I used that word. That a lot of people say, I wish that Michigan wouldn't use all of this money on a quarterback. I wish that they would use, they could use it to go out and get, whatever. I said this last week and just want to make it crystal clear because I've seen that comment a few times over the weekend. This is not people have given them the money and they're deciding how to use it. These are people for who have put their money in a pool very specifically to bring the person and the brand Bryce Underwood to Michigan. And that money is not transferable to other players, right? That's not like, well, if you can spend $6 million on this guy and $4 million on this guy. That's not what's happening here. Okay. This is very specifically, right? This isn't like I'm trying to, I have $20 to go buy a meal and I've got, $5 left over and I can go get something else, right? Like you've been given $20 to either get the meal or don't get the meal. Okay. So that's the case there. But I'd still expect Michigan to be very aggressive because I think based off of my conversation, some of the people who are working on this behind the scenes are not people who are necessarily benefactors regularly for Michigan NIL. So you still have the pool you already had plus this. Okay. So understand that. To my understanding, that's the qualifier to all of this. To my understanding, based on the conversations I have had. Right, like again, we're playing the game of telephone in a lot of ways, so there certainly can be some more minute details that could be off here and there, but from my understanding. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Probably, unless there's barring some massive developments, I can imagine we're not going to really talk much about the Bryce Underwood stuff for the rest of the week. Giving a rest to those who don't want to hear it, that are chicken littles and say he's not coming, he never was coming. I don't want to talk about the offense for this Michigan football team against Northwestern. That's what I want to talk about. I don't. Sometimes talking about the potential in the future is more exciting than talking about the present. And I'll tell you what. I hope that Bryce Underwood comes, if for no other reason, is it gives everyone a level of optimism going into next year and not complacency. There's a lot of complacency coming out of the national championship. Made it very hard to have shows in the summer. But it would be exciting to have some things to be excited about. I will say that. All right, that's going to do it for us today. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. Peace.